Hi, I'm Celia Schilling from Yacht Club Games.
This is Stephanie from the Boss Rush Podcast and the Boss Rush Network.
Hey, this is Mark and Keon from Bunte Avond.
Hey, this is Sebastian with the ProNerdReport.com and the Single Player Experience Podcast.
Hey, this is Todd Mitchell from Code Right Play.
Salutations, this is Mike Carroll from Stroll Art.
Hey, this is Patrick from the Backlog Odyssey.
Hey, this is Rune from Runic Codes.
Hi, this is Andrew from Spalato Bros.
Hi, this is Barry from Premium Edition Games.
Hi everyone, Jill Grote here from the Indie Informer.
Hey, this is Brimstone, and you're listening to Roger Reichart on the Gamerheads Podcast.
And welcome to another episode of the Gamerheads Podcast. My name is Roger. This week, I have a very special guest, well, several guests here. I have the folks at Daylight Basement Studios, the creators behind Rightfully Beary Arms, with me this week. And I have Chris, Garrett, and Mike. I'll let you all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gaming.
Hi,
Mike, yeah, Chris, go ahead. No, go ahead, Chris. You start. Yeah,
that's fine. Okay, I just shoved my way in, and here we go. Hi, I'm Chris, one of the game designers on Rightfully Beary Arms.
Yeah, I'm Mike. I do programming. That's my primary thing. Different design aspects and just kind of other odds and ends.
And I'm Garrett, and I do the music for the game.
Nice. Well, welcome all to the show. Glad that we were able to connect. One quick question I have before we get into the other questions, like, do you all work in the same studio together? Do you work remotely? How does that work for you guys?
We are all remote.
Okay.
We actually met Garrett at 2 PAX ago, and he joined on the project, and he isn't actually part of Daily Basement, but he's become very close and intertwined with the gaming design and process. So yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, tell us about yourself. How did Daylight Basement Studios start, and how did you get into gaming? It's in creating games, because that's I'm gonna tell you that is appealing, right, for a lot of folks, but also very scary.
Yeah, it actually, like, the way that we got into, at least the stories that Mike and I shared together of getting into game dev, is kind of how it also even started. So it started way back. I got into coding through game dev because I was interested in making my own games, and I think I did stuff in like Game Maker stuff way back then, and Scratch, and I picked up coding and then went to school and lost that that drive to do game dev, and I went into more traditional software engineering, and I realized how much I miss that creativity side of it and doing art and working with all these other people. And during my tenure in engineering, I met Mike at IBM, and we talked about how we got into game dev and doing all these different hobby projects, and we never really finished anything. And so this is the result of us trying to finish something.
Nice. So you met Mike at IBM? That's what you said? Yeah. So Mike, what about you? How did you get into this?
Yeah, so for me, like, I guess when I first started programming, it was kind of through, I guess, gaming and wanting to create my own games and just kind of be creative that way. And actually started, with, learning BASIC on a TRS-80 and just kind of working my way up, and different languages, and, just kind of doing these different side projects along the way. Eventually going to school for engineering and computer, programming, and then kind of moving into that as a career, and just kind of always doing these side projects, but never really getting serious about them. And then just kind of, worked with Chris, and it just kind of came up in a conversation like, hey, let's do this. And that's pretty much it. It's in terms of how we were actually able to commit to it and stay committed to it for as long as we have. That's that's kind of a hard, I think, question to answer. I'm not even really sure how that happened, but I think once the gears kind of get going, enough, I think it's kind of hard to pull away from it. So, but yeah, I think this is this is kind of our first real foray into something of this caliber.
Nice. And then Garrett, you it sounds like you met them at a PAX then, and then got pulled into the studio and started making music, right? You make the music for the game.
Yeah. So for me and my journey into the game dev world, it kind of started. I graduated college for music, and kind of started my freelance music career back in like 2012, 2013, and was kind of pigeonholed into doing like jingle writing and commercial writing and that kind of stuff, engineering for studios and that kind of thing. All the while I was, playing D&D with some friends, and the DM in my group started, doing some like getting some music for sessions and kind of expanding the kind of audio world of our D&D sessions. And so one year I decided to make some music for like theme music for each of the characters, and then that kind of led one thing into another, and I started like offering that as a service where I make music for other tabletop players, and
that's awesome.
That kind of led me to a lot of other creators who make music for video games. And then that's kind of how I was like, you know what, I should go to PAX this year. And then next thing you know, here I am.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, tell us about the game itself then. So Rightfully Beary Arms. What is the game about? And then also tell us about the game, but then also I want to know more about the title too. Like, how did you come up with the title for this game?
Yeah, it's an action shoot 'em up roguelite, similar to other bullet hell titles as well. I'd say like the gunplay, we get compared a lot to like Gungeon or Nuclear Throne, but a lot of inspiration probably came from other games, honestly, in the roguelite genre, like Dead Cells and like quite a few I can't even think. But and we put a lot more emphasis on like the planning and the progression part of roguelites, because we felt like that was like missing, and that's something that Mike and I enjoyed within game titles. So you can actually like plan the dungeons you want to crawl, plan your possible resources that you can collect. We still toss in that randomness that is like really fun in roguelites, and kind of having different builds with different weapon upgrade builds, and building up your character, and different meta progression for Barry, the main character. And then one unique aspect is you can actually choose how the enemy gets upgraded, and how the game gets more difficult. So you usually see that when you die, but in the real game, as you beat bosses in your run, you're stacking them, and then when you die, they clear, and then you start with a new enemy upgrade that you have to choose.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, awesome. And in the title, Rightfully Beary Arms.
Yeah, so that comes from we haven't explored too much in the story, especially and probably won't with early access, but the idea is actually Barry is a teddy bear that a kid is imagining. Their teddy bear going through all this different like conflict and things like that, and this kid is struggling with maybe self-concept of like who they want to become, maybe different anxieties or different conflicts they want to overcome, and this teddy bear is their source of strength, right, and like who they are. And so the bear themselves writes to the child and signs it Rightfully Beary Arms, because the bear is named Barry. So
that's awesome. That's I mean, I think when we talked briefly at PAX, like I think you mentioned to me a little bit about you're playing as a teddy bear, and it's an imagination, right, of a character or of a kid and his imagination or imaginary a friend. But that's really deep. That's awesome. I think you should like lean into that, because there's not a lot of games that, in this genre that kind of deal with, a kid growing up with their own anxieties of like what's expected of them and where they're supposed to be and who they're supposed to be, right? So
Yeah,
that's
I,
awesome.
I will say that we do want to explore it more and figure out that storytelling, but for EA, we're focusing on gameplay mechanics, trying to get that down, and we also don't want to necessarily spoil too many of the story elements before 1.0 release. So
yeah. Well, you just did because you. I'm just kidding.
that's known. We've talked about it, so we got some other stuff.
Oh, that's funny. One of the things, just a side note here. One of the things I really enjoyed about the game when I played it at PAX 2 was the writing behind it. And some of the funny things, like I ended up going behind the Fox character and talking to him, and he had some funny lines to say, and I actually burst out laughing when I was playing the game. I thought that was hilarious. Can you talk about the writing too, around the characters and the dialogue?
That was mostly Mike,
so I do a lot of the writing, and I think most of the writing that shows up, I think like it's like the weapon pickers and things like that will have some writing, but in terms of like actual character dialogue, most of that currently is just in the tutorial, and a lot of it was me just kind of being literal, and thinking like, okay, we have to try to explain to the player how to do this thing, and I'm just going to cut to the chase, and I'm just going to say it the way it is. And a lot of it came from me just kind of like, this is how I talk, and I'm just going to maybe spice it up a little bit. In terms of like approaching the character from the back, I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I just thought like, hey, like why not, like if you're trying to talk to him from the back, that's kind of weird. You wouldn't do that like in real life, would you? So and so I think that's kind of like where that came from. And I don't know, I can't really think of any other games where if you talk to them from the front versus the back, they say completely different things. So.
Yeah. I loved that. And I have to ask, was I the only one at PAX that actually noticed that? Because I don't know why I decided. I was just like exploring, and I was like, oh my gosh.
I will say it was pretty few. You had a very genuine reaction, and we loved it. So at first I thought something was wrong, like it was a bad bug, and then I realized that you were laughing at like a fart joke.
I laughed so hard at that. I thought that was great. So one of the things you mentioned in the game is the unique aspect of the twist on the roguelike mechanics. So you have things where your next run, you might have fewer health drops, or the enemies can move faster. What were some of the inspirations around that twist, and how many different mechanics or twists like that do you have in the game?
Yeah, that came from Wildermyth. I don't know if you've played Wildermyth, but it's like this really beautiful, like dynamic storytelling kind of RPG game. You can play, I believe, co-op too, which is kind of neat. So it's very tabletop-like, but in a video game, and they try to make the story dynamic, and so things emerge from it. And one of the things that emerge from it is you can choose how to like make the world difficult, and I thought that was a really, really awesome element. And I was like, why isn't this in roguelites? Like that seems like such a awesome place for this to happen. So
yeah,
in total, in total, I don't know how many calamities we have. It's like maybe pushing 20. I don't know, Mike, do you remember exactly?
Wow. Yeah, 20, 30. I mean, there's definitely plans to expand that and do all sorts of crazy things, as we continue development.
Wow.
It's such a great like balancing mechanic too, because it's like you could be like, hey, like I think this is a great way to challenge the player, and then if you like just straight up implement it into the game, you lose a bunch of people because they're like, I don't like that at all, like that wasn't fun. But if you give them a choice to do it, it's like they can decide not to. A lot of players will take the calamity, they'll take damage while dodging, which is so interesting because I am so adverse to that. I do not want to do that at all. Yeah. I need to dodge and be able to not take damage. But some people see that and they're like, oh yeah, great. It's a free one. And I'm like, oh no, not for me. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I found that really interesting too. And just the fact that it really allows you to play like towards your style as well. And also play with the fact that, hey, I can I can survive with, like, for instance, I'll take damage if I dodge. That just means I just won't be dodging, right? Like, I'm going to go in with guns a-blazing. I thought that was really fascinating. Or like less health drops and things like that. I thought those was such a cool twist on the roguelike. So yeah, that was like a standout for me.
Yeah, we really wanted to give like players more choice into things and have it influence their play style. Just like feed into your strengths, and your strengths could be different from run to run. It might be like for this run, because we have certain items and systems in the game that actually save from run to run, so you don't necessarily lose weapons that you collect. You might lose the weapon upgrades, but you don't lose the weapon. So you could choose to build a certain way and build the enemy a certain way just so you can collect weapons, right? So that it sets you up for your next run to be that much better and more successful. So
yeah, that's cool. Was it hard to balance the game then with that? I mean, because you could really make it balanced, tip the scales towards the player, or vice versa, right? That it could be even uber challenging for the player. They're like, well, this is not fun anymore.
I think it's been like a really cool design lever to have, because you might find something that's really fun, but it's kind of broken, and maybe in a bad or a good way for the player. But it's like, just maybe then make it a low chance for it to come up, and then when it does come up, it's like, wow, that's awesome. It's like such a rewarding thing for the player to have. And then once the player dies, there's a lot of things in RBA that can make you die. Then it just resets, and then it's gone. So it's not like you had some of these systems forever. In terms of balancing, it's actually been not too bad. It's been really trying to take the things that are overly broken out, not too broken.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you'll find as you play it is, you may find like a weapon or a weapon upgrade that makes it almost seem like it's broken, in a sense that it becomes really overpowered. But there's pretty much always going to be something that counters that, which could be a calamity or whatever it might be. So even though you might think like, oh, I have this awesome weapon that's just destroys everything, there's going to be something that almost certainly is going to come your way that's going to just kind of cancel that out. So
yeah, that's awesome. The other thing that I noticed too, and Chris, I talked to you about this when I was playing it at PAX, is the lighting and the art. I just thought that was so awesome, just like how beautiful it was. And you talked more about how, some of the art is 3D and some of it is 2D, right? Can you talk about the art behind the game and how did you incorporate the light and in the different effects that you did?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about more of like the art itself, and then Mike did a lot about the lighting, so I handed off to him after that. But originally the game actually started more of like, I would say in spirit, a Binding of Isaac clone. It was top down, and the camera would lock to a room, and the only thing that was a little different is that we had a little bear running around with a gun that could fire any direction. And like the color palette was like chosen to be very like, you have these like really cool colors, like the blues that were meant to signify more good things. Like your character is Barry, he's kind of this like blue, green, tealish, and then the background set to a yellow with the enemies being more of the like that dark red sort of. And I actually pulled a lot from like Cold War propaganda.
Oh, really?
That's
interesting.
To kind of give that like different look and stuff like that, because some of the kid is like trying to experience like how to reconcile maybe things that they don't know what's going on, and that's outside their world, right? So it's like, what was one thing Americans grew up with that was really big and scary? Cold War, right? So but and then one day Mike was like, all right, Chris, everything's broken, but I made a change. He's like, I changed everything to 3D, and I couldn't compile the game. It was a wreck for a little bit, but we worked through it, and it came out like a really cool, like, kind of like Paper Mario style almost. and then just over time we just kept iterating on it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think early on, there was a lot of we didn't fully know what we were making, so there's a tremendous amount of experimentation, and I think it kind of came out of that. I just basically, at one point, thought it would look cool if it was, kind of had that, I guess, Paper Mario look, or basically, these 2D sprites in a 3D world, but not overly 3D, just kind of like a little bit of a 3D look to it, and then you get your real-time 3D lighting in there. You do all sorts of kind of cool stuff with particles and things like that, and just it was basically taking that, finding something that looked more or less kind of what maybe I envisioned, and then just kind of iterating on it. There's definitely a lot of playing around with it because I think there's videos on our YouTube channel when we're still kind of experimenting that it has kind of the same look, but it looks like kind of in a sense like nowhere near how it looks now, even though it's almost exactly the same. And so I think it just kind of came out of that just experimentation phase.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it just that artwork just pops with the 3D effect and the lighting and everything. I just thought that was so brilliant. And the other thing that I also noticed too is just the amount of different characters, different enemies that you have in the game. How many different sprites for enemies do you have in this game?
I think we're pushing 30 right now for EA, which honestly we might be more now. I counted a while ago, but originally it was going to be like, I think we went a little bit ambitious with how we were gonna introduce enemies into the game, and it kind of worked in our favor because now we've kind of reworked the game a little bit to introduce them a little bit more slowly, but a lot of the enemies are born from puns, and Mike and Garrett's actually pretty good at this too now, just shouting out puns, and it's like, all right, that's gotta be an enemy. So we write down a list and do some artwork for it, and then just keeps going. So
that's pretty awesome. Good or pretty bad, depends on who you ask.
Yeah. You get a lot of eye rolls, so
that's a new enemy right there.
Oh, nice. Well, and then Garrett, the other thing that I noticed too is just how awesome the music is in this game. Can you tell us more about how the music was incorporated and the inspiration around the music in the game?
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, the biggest thing when I'm writing music is especially when I'm working with like a collaborative kind of thing, I really want to get as much from the collaborator as possible. I wouldn't hate if someone came up to me and said, hey, yeah, make whatever you want. But usually when people say that and I make whatever I want, people aren't as satisfied because they're like, well, I was kind of thinking this would happen. And so, I immediately upon seeing their game, I knew that there was already like a giant sense of character, just with like you mentioned, the art style, just the different types of programming choices, like how weighty some things might feel, and how like that creates this juxtaposition with like this really kind of hefty gun game with cute characters, and it just, a lot more than some other people that I might work with. It really kind of like knew what its brand was before maybe they even said let's build a brand, and I think that's a really important thing. And so when it comes to music, like I would feel all that kind of stuff and know like what intention the music should have just based off of the intention that they're kind of putting out there in every other aspect of the game. And so obviously it's not completely, intuition to me. Like I did ask them like a ton of questions when we first started out, really going like deeper than surface level, just to make sure that I kind of was thinking as closely to their own thinking as I could, without being them pretty much. And asking questions like, who is the teddy bear? Like, who is the kid? Why these colors? And actually, even before I asked questions, Chris and Mike sent me like tons and tons of like different artwork assets and like PowerPoint presentations about their intent with different things, and that's just like that's a dream of mine. Like whenever I'm working on like RPG kind of stuff, I always want like a lore dump, because that's just like so useful to understanding the tone of what I'm writing for. And so like not even having to ask for that is just like a game changer. And so the first track I did was the title theme, which was a really good move, because that's kind of meant to capture the whole tone of the game. And the biggest thing that I remember typing out to like as a note to myself is like really highlighting the juxtaposition between like cute and violent, and like where to lead into it in what way. That ended up kind of manifesting as like Darren Korb, kind of from like Hades, Bastion, Pyre, and all those soundtracks like that. But plus, I mean, what I've said before is if Darren Korb wrote for Sesame Street, so it's kind of like lots of kazoos and toy bells, and then like guitar, bass, drums, and
that's awesome.
Gnarly but cute.
Yeah, I love it. So what were some of the challenges that you all faced when creating the game?
Honestly, I feel like at first it was just kind of scoping it correctly. We had just so many ideas that we still want to probably explode the game out. But I think we're honing in on a good loop and a good formula. Just really kind of tweaking it is what we need to do. Other than that, it's been probably balancing life and doing game dev. Like we've all work full time and then do this part time. So at least that's been it for me.
Yeah, I think that's the big stuff. I think another aspect was not knowing. We had kind of a vague idea going into this what we wanted to make, but there was just so many aspects. From a creative perspective as well as a technical perspective of what we wanted to do, and not really knowing those things. I think because of that, it kind of dragged things on a lot longer than it probably otherwise would have. I think so. That was definitely one of the challenges.
Garrett, anything for you? Any challenges musically wise?
Trying to think. I feel like they're fun challenges, but really just like making sure that when the challenge with games is always having to write something that doesn't fully exist yet, like write for something that doesn't fully exist yet, and being able to adapt to any potential changes. So this game is definitely like, I'm pretty sure I'm maybe started writing before I had a build that I could play myself. But aside from that, it's really just making sure, like I remember writing the first like piece of music for when you actually are in a dungeon and fighting. I was like, okay, how do I make it like the quote that they always told me is you want the player to feel like they're John Wick. So I was like, how do I get that without like, I don't know, I don't want to make it feel like it's Sugar Rush music. I don't want it to feel like, so there are so many different routes to go. So kind of like making sure that gets nailed. And they're, like I said, they're fun challenges, but it's a lot of guess and check type of stuff. But I feel like that's probably the hardest part. But generally my approach has been do what I can to leave it open-ended, where I'd be able to do that. Where that might be like, if I write a melody for this dungeon, let me make it so I could potentially rearrange that melody to sound like any other style of music, and have it be adaptable. Because sometimes you might, sometimes a dungeon theme might not have any melody at all, and that makes it so you're kind of boxed into that music being particularly for that purpose. But giving it that breathability and room for variation has made it so as I've progressed and written more for the dungeons and kind of gotten a feel for what the player experiences, I've been able to like, give a lot of room for variation based off of that kind of concept. So I guess, yeah, it's been that's been a struggle, but it's been getting more fun of a of a struggle as we progress through it, for sure.
Yeah.
Garrett's ability to just take word salad and just be able to digest it and then actually make music out of it was wild. Like the parameters that Mike and I gave for the arcade theme, I think it was just like it's like Friday night, you should be thinking like 8-bit, you should be thinking Kenny Loggins, you should be thinking and I was just like, in my head, like, there's no way he's gonna write something.
Did it almost become a challenge to just see, like, what can Garrett write at this point? Let's see what he can do. Just throw out a bunch of ideas.
It's happening right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty excited because they've already gone in like so many different directions for dungeon themes. So like, please give me something that's like extremely stupid.
Don't challenge me with a good time.
What did you all learn about yourselves and your studio as well, working on this game? Chris, I'll start with you. What did you learn?
I think the big thing that I had to learn, I guess, through this was just more. I always felt like in my engineering career, I was fairly good at like project management and planning, and this was just like a whole nother level of like dedication and motivation, and like when you're not, there's just moments when it's just, I'll be honest, you're just not motivated and not really feeling dedicated to this. You're like, why did I decide to suck up my nights and weekends with this project? And like, you make a post on Twitter, no one responds. You're like, all right, this is cool. So you have to like, I learned my, it's going to sound cliche, but it's a jog. You got to jog it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And just pacing myself, learning how to do that better.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? What did you learn?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an aspect of it. Aside from that, professionally, I collaborate on, I guess, I would say like technical visions of different products, and I think this was a collaboration on a creative vision, and I think that was kind of new to me. So I may have a creative vision, Chris may have something, Garrett may have something, and kind of putting those all together and being able to be constructive, in different maybe criticisms or different ideas and recommendations, and being able to receive and give those, from a perspective outside of that technical sense. I think that was the big one for me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, especially since, you both working on, in engineering and working in IT and such, you work on things that are not your babies, right? Like, it's work. And now this is stuff that you are creating and bringing to life, right? And I can see like how that just that feedback loop might feel different than getting feedback on some technical specs that you made for work, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. Garrett, what about you?
I think I learned that there's a certain type of collaboration that I'm very privy to, and I guess more so than I thought before. And I guess with this project, oftentimes when I'm working with somebody, it'll click and like they'll be happy with what I make, but it won't necessarily feel as even of a collaboration. Maybe it'll be like someone gave me a little bit to go off of, but they're like, oh yeah, you totally like, this is what I wanted. Or maybe they gave me much more, and I was like doing kind of the most commercialized version of what they wanted, maybe not something groundbreaking. But with this type of collaboration, it's like I feel like we ended up talking to each other more often than I do with other collaborators, and that kind of builds a lot of different avenues for thinking when I approach a project. And yeah, it's a very interesting type of collaboration that I don't get a lot of, and I've learned that I think I like collaboration more than I thought I did previously. Because
Nice.
I definitely like, being a homebody, being by myself and working on something. But when I have something to work off of that is strong on its own, that's like a big motivator. And yeah.
Nice. So the game is in early access right now. Is that correct, or has it launched in early access yet?
Not yet. July 27th will be launching early access.
Okay, awesome. And I know I talked a little bit about this before, but so your focus is on Steam right now. But is there any talk about bringing this to the console, Xbox, Switch, PlayStation?
It's always something we're considering. I think right now we're really just focusing on getting that player feedback and kind of building the game to be the best it can be right now, and performance, things like that. And we're keeping an eye on it and trying to explore other options when we can.
Nice. How can people find more about you guys and follow the progress of the game?
Yeah, I think the best way is you can head up our website, rbagame.com. It's got our Discord on there, Twitter, go to our Steam page, things like that. Wishlisting and following on Steam is probably the best. It helps boost us in Steam's algorithm and lets us know that you wanna play our game. But yeah.
Nice. Any final thoughts?
I'll just add this. In terms of checking us all out, I think one of the big things is that we definitely want player feedback. We take that definitely to heart, and we want to make, as Chris said, we want to make the game be the best that it can be. And so definitely, if people check out either the demo, which is live now, or early access, if you have any thoughts at all, anything, any way that you think we could make it better, definitely let us know.
A ton of our Discord feedback has made it into the game. So if there's something that if you want to influence a game in a good or a bad way, we'll listen. And that's probably our problem, that we'll listen to all ideas. So some people say stuff to me as a joke, and I'm like, but what if? What if we put a butt in the game?
Well, I loved my time with the game at PAX. I thought it was fantastic. You guys are doing such a fantastic job, and I'm excited for when this launches in early access, and excited to, as we go on, have you guys come back on the show and talk about the game and what might be coming up next for you guys too in the future. So.
Awesome. Really appreciate you having us. Loved your write-up from PAX. It was so good. I liked your little sentence. It was just like look at things from different angles, or talk to things from different angles. I like that little lead on. But yeah, so good. Thanks for having us on the show, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me. And listeners, check them out. I'll put a link to the Steam page and also to their website as well, so where you can wish list the game and check it out. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.